That's because I was in meetings, driving, and I kind of put everybody on ignore. So I tried to at least get something out for you yesterday and put it out through one of the vendors here. So I think it's important to remind people about this issue because I think it's getting lost. This started as a protest, all right? We got here and we did it to ourselves. Every citizen of this county did this to ourselves. We keep electing the wrong people who make bad policies and bad laws. These are your own headlines. Back in December of 21, people start pitching tents. I would point out that this conversation between WSDOT and the city started around this time. It would have been much easier for the city of Spokane had WSDOT cooperated with them, and we would have been able to deal with this when there was just a couple of tents, rather than what we face today. And again, I remind you, this is a protest. This started as a protest, it continues as a protest. So, in January, WSDOT decides they're not going to move it. WSDOT is the owner of this property. They have a responsibility for things that go on that property now. They have a liability. And quite frankly, if they have a liability, that means everyone in this room that pays taxes in this state, you have that same liability. Because it's your tax dollars going to have to be spent to defend WSDOT's inaction on this issue. Because there are civil issues here for WSDOT. These folks have been told to hold out and they'll get some tiny homes. Where are they going to put those tiny homes? Because the city's not going to permit that area for that process. And as you know, I have, and that investigation is open and is currently ongoing, and there's a lot of information coming in concerning Jules Helping Hands, Ben Stucker, and the list is starting to grow. However, ladies and gentlemen, you do a lot of interviews with me, and some of them are hard-hitting interviews. When are you going to do hard-hitting interviews with these activists and the people that are mentioned hereafter? Because one of you interviewed Ben Stucker yesterday, and he said that had nothing to do with anything with Jules. Well, unless Lindler got that one wrong, and I know Daniel, he's very thorough, I doubt he got it wrong. It says right here, they joined forces with former City Council President Ben Stucker and a wide variety of local service providers. So how did Ben not have any involvement here? The City of Spokane in early September gives WSDOT a deadline. I believe that deadline was October 14th. WSDOT and the City of Spokane leadership are, according to your headlines, are doing this. I apologize, my clicker has a mind of its own today. And then your own headlines, state rebukes Spokane's demand for help, says it will not clear the homeless camp unless all of this is taken care of. WSDOT doesn't have the authority to make those demands of the City of Spokane. And quite frankly, this is a protest about low barrier housing, i.e. more in the tune of no barrier housing. I did something the other day. I checked my birth certificate. And nowhere in that certificate did it say that I'm entitled to anything. Matter of fact, it said you're on your own. Good luck, work hard, hope it works out. There is housing in this community, folks, but that nobody wants to go to it. There are options that have been offered, but this is about no barrier, no rules. Anybody in this room get to play by no rules? Anybody in this room get to play by no rules? I don't think so. So, for them to demand that safety and security, WSP's already said, don't have the manpower. City of Spokane surely doesn't have the manpower. And then we have this that was sent out by WASBOC, or by WASDOT, concerning my letter to them. They had a meeting with the city, but they didn't invite me. And where did I come involved in this? I've been watching this since December. I have been keeping a close eye on what's going there since September, or since last December. We were seeing the crime spill into neighborhoods throughout the region. So the false flag that some want to throw out of, oh, if you clear it, it will just go everywhere, it's already gone everywhere, folks. That is expanding throughout our community. It's not isolated, as they'd like you to believe. That is a false and a red herring. On December 20th, after hearing that the city had sent their notice for October 14th, I called WASDOT. You know, in July I offered the mayor any assistance. She said, let me continue to work with WASDOT. Well, when I read your article, I went, well, that must not have played out. So I called WASDOT and talked to Mike Gribner. And I said, Mike, do you guys want Camp Hope there? Well, not really, Sheriff. Well, I'll help you clear it. Oh, no, Sheriff, it's not that easy. No, Mike, it is that easy. All WASDOT has to do is say, Sheriff, please clear it. And that can be done. It's not that easy, Sheriff. They're at the west side. I said, well, talk to your folks on the west side. You know, the amazing thing is, during that day on the September 20th, I started hearing that local media was, did the sheriff really do this? I have really come to despise the yellow dog cowardly tactics of some on the left, i.e. Lisa Brown, and their politics. I know when gaslighting is about ready to start, and it started that day. So I kind of went on media silence from that day. They sent me this email and asked me what my plans are. Not my responsibility to figure out how to fix your mess, but it is my responsibility to clean it up. WASDOT and many of the elected officials in this area seem to forget all of the efforts that have been done throughout this community, many of them led by the sheriff's office, to help people in this community. I have a great friend and companion, and the strongest advocate for the people of this community by the name of Judith Gilmore, that has worked with me on multiple projects. She developed a business roundtable, 360 businesses, I believe, at one time, that were willing to give jobs to people coming out of Geiger and out of jail. We created a apprenticeship program into the building trades, and AGC sponsors it. Highly successful. Highly successful. But we have also tried and given the recommendations of how to fix these issues and help people get off drugs. But Graham Biggs, for the last 13 years, has fought to prevent us from moving that plan forward, even though it is based on smart justice. It's all about programming. This last week I attended a function at the Eastside Business Association, and a mother walked up to me and she said, "Sheriff, I just need to tell you something. 9 years ago, you were at the graduation for my son's programming out of Geiger. He's been clean for 9 years, and they just had their first baby. I have my first grandchild. So please don't tell me we haven't given you options of how to fix things. There's just not the political will. More importantly, it does not meet the criteria of no one goes to jail. Sorry. There are some bad people out there that just need it. That's where they go. That's what that needs to happen. So when you start talking to me about what my plan is, that plan has been sitting on the shelf since 2011. When they had their closed door meeting, I wanted, why was it closed door and why wasn't I invited? Knowing that I had contacted WSDOT, and they started feeding that information to you on the 20th. On the 22nd, I sent my response to WSDOT, and then WSDOT and Commerce do some emergency gaslighting with the media in response to my letter, and here we are. And I'll go back to one of the stories and some of the comments here. Mind you, they sent their basically go stuff it letter to the city on the day that I actually contacted them, on the 20th. Or at least that's when you reported it. So 2 days later, they're now in productive conversations. Well, I'm glad I got involved, because it didn't sound too productive 2 days prior. And the sheriff's proposal doesn't capture the spirit of the conversations. Well, what I understand, and I wish somebody would verify for me, is if the spirit of the conversations means that Camp Hope stays open until next summer, you're right, I'm not in tune with that. Absolutely, I'm not in tune with that. So why did I get involved? Because an entire sector of our city, in the city of Spokane, has lost their voice. No one cares. No one's fighting. They're getting trampled. And it's not just the neighborhood. The individuals that Joel's Helping Hands and those that are supporting that or allowing that, the situation they have created is dangerous. And deplorable. but they seem, I guess that's okay. Apparently, they're going to build a fence around it, out of sight, out of mind. Are you going to put curtains on the fence too? What's the fence going to do to the people that are living in those conditions? This is not compassion, ladies and gentlemen. This is torture. This is punishment. Period. I can't put it any differently. It is not compassionate to allow somebody to pump poison into their body and allow them to die on ground soaked in human waste. Tell me where your compassion is. I will tell you it does not meet the compassion that I define as in maybe it's time the city of Spokane, DOT, Commerce, and the state drop the handout philosophy and adopt the hand-up philosophy and start saving people's lives rather than destroying people's lives. Perhaps that's what you need to do. All right. I saw it on Krim last night. Does he have the authority? Ladies and gentlemen, you've never heard me talk about the power of this office. Because power is something I really, in very much many ways, despise. Now, why would that be? Because the saying that power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, is very true. So I try to remain grounded in what my duties truly are, and that is to be the voice of the people. And that is what my duty truly is. The East Central District has lost their voice. I am now going to be that voice for them. There's two people, two figures in history that helped me stay grounded in power. King David and King Solomon. How did it work out for them? But the power of the office of the sheriff is fairly immense. And this is what scares the heck out of progressive Marxist socialists. And this is why King County's sheriff is no longer elected. This is an AG's opinion out of the state of Washington, 1961. The discussion was, does the sheriff have the power to enforce laws in the state? Basically. I don't give you the entire reading, but I do give you where to find it. So it states that my duties, my powers come out from the Constitution and are outlined in RCW 3628.010. And those duties do very much exist in the common law. This is, I added this, the sheriff, is an important office and one of the oldest known under the law. For 1,000 years, the sheriff has been the principal conservator of the peace in his county with full power to command, whenever necessary, the power of the county. I'll give you a little secret. I learned this just shortly after being appointed. I believe it was before my election. I got a call from, I believe it was Jim Nix, interim police chief for the city of Spokane. Sheriff, we're sending our tech team down to WSU riot. Okay, great, Jim. Well, your guys, why you call me? Sheriff, you don't understand. All assets within Spokane County and law enforcement are under your control, and when we leave the county, we need to let you know. The highlighted areas, the sheriffs are given power, and it is made their duty to preserve the peace. Camp Hope has disturbed the peace of this entire community. It is a protest. He may be said to act as the chief magistrate of his county, wielding the executive power for the preservation of the public peace, and it has been held that the duty of a sheriff in the enforcement of the law implies initiative on his part. Why do you think I paid attention to what was going on out there? Because the next parts are fairly frightening if you're a sheriff. Because I have a duty to pay attention, and that he must be reasonably alert with respect to the possible violations of the law, and is not entitled to wait until they come to his personal knowledge. The sheriff in King County did not uphold her duties when she allowed 9 city blocks to be taken in that county. She could be held liable. His authority is countywide, and he is not restricted by municipal limits. Still, the authority of the sheriff with his collaborative duty remains, and this says that, yeah, cities can have their own, but still my authority remains the same. And it goes on to state that, yeah, cities can have their own, but, you know, a policeman is an officer whose duties have been, for a local convenience, carved out of the old duties of the constable. And the constables were always part of the general force at the disposal of the sheriff. Under all of this, the sheriff may leave local enforcement in local hands, but only as long as reasonable efforts in good faith are made to enforce the laws. WSDOT, the state of Washington, and the City Council of Spokane have not been doing their jobs. And this decision, this is actually out of a court case out of Kansas that the Attorney General's office used, because the sheriff was in big trouble because he didn't act. Hence, will not be guilty of any serious neglect of his duties if he gives little attention to police matters in such city, but this rule has a proper qualification. If the sheriff has reason to believe that the police force is neglecting its duty, it is his duty to inform himself. I'm not saying that SPD is doing that. I'm just saying SPD's hands are slightly tied. Dereliction of other officials cannot excuse the sheriff for failure to perform his statutory duties. And it goes on to say that regardless of my manpower, I don't get to say we can't come. When the state passed their reform laws, that shockwave went through the law enforcement community, and you watched many communities say, we're not coming. This office pulled all its personnel into a gym in Central Valley High School, into the auditorium, and said the following: we will not allow our city, our counties, to be turned over to thugs. We will continue to enforce the law regardless of what the legislature has done. We will just do it as much as we can and to the best of our ability within the new guidelines they gave us. You can't stop coming. It says we don't have that option. A public official holds his office, Commonre, with all responsibles attached. Commonre means burden. The burden is mine. RCW outlines this. As you saw, it is consistent with the AG's opinion. They may call to their aid such persons or powers of their county as they may deem necessary. Elected officials appointed, heads up, I will be calling on you to resolve this matter. I have a duty to make a complaint. And a warning. Do not, because I was at a sheriff's conference yesterday, folks. One of the biggest conversations we had was about the erosion of the power of the sheriff. The day you lose your elected sheriff, you have truly lost your law enforcement voice. I am the voice of the people. And I don't take that lightly. I never have. For those of you that have been in this community very long, I take you back to 2008 and 2009. Who closed the schools? I did. Under what authority did I do that? I just showed you. Ms. Garcia has held this community hostage for the last 9 months. Ms. Garcia thinks that this is some kind of game. I can assure you it is not. We are going to resolve this. The prosecutor's office is currently working on a warrant of abatement. The process takes 20 days, and we will resolve this matter. We have the capability. There are options, and there is nowhere in the Constitution of the United States that says, or the state of Washington for that fact, that says that a person is guaranteed no barrier housing. We have housing. We have housing with barriers. Oh, and I think I missed the slide up there. That's the one that said that a poll was taken and nobody wants to go to the housing. That is your choice. We will give you your options. You will make your choices. The clock is continuing to tick. First question. Amanda.
Sheriff Knezovich, Amanda Rowley with Crime 2. Can you explain what legal tools you'll be using to clear out the homeless encampment off I-90? Nuisance property, trespassing, what will it look like?
I just outlined that for you. We're working on the warrant of abatement.
Abatement?
Yes.
Can you explain that process in layman's
It's just
terms?
like any other property that's owned by somebody. If they allow it to become a nuisance and if they allow it to become a crime generator, we can shut it down. We can take the property.
Does that take any other sort of approval, or is it as early as tomorrow? You could bring in a force to move people out.
No, I said the process takes 20 days.
Sheriff, I'm Misty Reed. I'm the new assistant news director at 4 News Now. And so I've been here about a month and I've been following this story. I understand it takes 20 days, so that's why you set the deadline for mid-October. not an
Actually, I
exact
used the
date.
city's deadline,
Oh, okay.
October
So
14th.
what does
When I
it
read
look
that in
like?
the paper, went, well, okay, the city said October 14th, October 14th.
Gotcha. What does it look like you've secured your abatement, everything's legally clear. What does that day look like for the sheriff's office when they go down to Camp Hope? What does the clearing out process look like?
Well, since we just got hit with a post from the same individuals that caused a riot in our community in 2020, and that individual actually threatened to want to cut the heads off of police officers with a saw, I'm not going to give you what that day looks like. But I can tell you that on the 28th, we are having a major meeting to discuss what that day looks like. But I'm not going to give you the tactics, since we now have been put on notice that, quote, "we'll see you there."
And who's this individual you're talking about? I'm not familiar with that.
I'll show you it.
Okay.
Would that involve arrests, Sheriff, if people don't comply?
Yeah.
What would you cite them for?
Well, it would be breach of peace.
Breach of peace?
Remember, this is a protest.
That-
We
that's
are
the-
going to declare this an unlawful assembly.
Okay.
They don't have, this is not lawful. They're breaching so many laws in this county. This is a protest. Again, I'm trying to frame it back to what this really is. This isn't an economic catastrophe, folks. These folks didn't lose their jobs. God help us when that one hits us, because we will have spent all our resources on this issue. What are we going to do when we truly have families sleeping out on the street because they've lost their jobs, they've lost their homes? That really happens. I watched it happen in the 80s.
Can you speak
Down
more-
and Out in America. That was an amazing series. So, that said, this is not economic. This is a drug-fueled protest of people who want no barriers, and they want to do whatever they want. Again, who in this room gets to do that? And it is causing major problems. So this protest is about to end.
Can you speak more to that investigative part of Julie Garcia and those
Ongoing
characters?
investigation, I'm not going to give you any information on that because I don't want to compromise it. I will tell you this, though, the information's flowing in.
Is it about fraud or?
I made that very clear in my letter. I did mention fraud. The old saying is, follow the money. We're going to follow the money.
Sheriff, your plan talks about busing, giving bus tickets out. How is that going to be funded? What buses are we talking about?
Well, there's $25 million that Lisa Brown has at her disposal, and I'm going to ask Lisa for the $25 million to help resolve her mess. And this happens all over, Amanda. Matter of fact, there are people that give people bus tickets to Spokane because they know that we're going to just let it happen. My son's a police officer in Evanston, Wyoming. Nico, how do you deal with the homeless here? Bus ticket. That was the same answer when I worked in Wyoming in Rock Springs. Went to the sergeant's office, we got a bus ticket, and gone.
So are we talking tickets to Greyhound, tickets on STA? What specifically?
Wherever they want to go. We're giving them their options. The best thing for these folks to do is go back home, get cleaned up, and become productive again.
And outside of a bus ticket or rest, where will these people go?
We have low barrier housing in this community. We have barrier housing in this community. We're going to use every ounce that we have. Amanda, we have motels in this area. I believe my letter even said, why don't you just pay rent for them for the next year? It'll be a lot safer for everybody involved, and they have the money. there are options. Here's why this hasn't been resolved. This is a political chess match, and the stall tactic is in play. And when I heard that, okay, really, they're talking about next summer? What do you have in the city of Spokane next summer? I'll fill you in. It's called an election for your city government. They don't want this resolved. If they wanted it resolved, Amanda, they could resolve this in January, December, February. They could resolve this before it became 300 people. And as long as they stall it and they keep bringing people in, because they are bringing people in, this community pays the price. I can assure you that this community is done with this. I've spent entire weekend afternoons talking to people in the neighborhoods surrounding them and splintering off of them. They are frustrated, they are angry, and sadly, many of them are talking about moving from our fine community. Spokane has potential to be one of the greatest communities in this nation, and we are destroying it. Dead ends.
Sheriff, quick follow-up, Guy Tannenbaum from KHQ. With regard to the bus ticket situation, you just mentioned that this is something that has solved the problem in other places, but we talk about wanting to solve the issue in Spokane. How does sending people elsewhere give people the help that they need? How can you assure people that they're going to have the help that they need when they go home, rather than just shipping the problem elsewhere?
Nate, I want to ask you a question. If these people really wanted the help, would they have gone to the help that's already been offered? Yes, they would have. Again, this is not about the poor homeless. They are being played as pawns. They are truly victims in this also.
So if they're victims-
There is help out there. We can get them that help, but you have to be able and want to get that help. I mentioned that graduation. Every person that has been successfully, that have been able to break this, answered this one question when I used to attend those graduations out at Geiger. I'd ask this question: who in this room has the only power and authority to ensure your success? And each and every one of those inmates went, that person. They got it. But it took being incarcerated, getting cleaned up, getting treatment, going through programming, and they got cleaned up. That game plan's been on the shelf collecting dust since 2011. It's modeled after Smart Justice and Brian Biggs and No New Jails and P-Jails, and I can go on with the alphabets, have fought it tooth and nail. They don't want this situation to be resolved. They don't want it fixed, because the day it's fixed, there's no more political wedge issue. There's no more money coming their way. There's no more problem. They have to keep this going. They have to continue down this line in order to maintain their voice at the pulpit, which is a destructive voice, and the money flowing into their pockets. And some electeds are banking that it will get them elected or re-elected. So to paint this as, what are these poor people going to do? Take the help that's being offered. That is the simplest answer. And we have the ability. I just listed all of these programs that we can get you in and get you jobs, get you into housing, and get you moved on. There are options.
What's the best way to get them involved in those programs? Arrests or shipping them off?
At times, if you go ask, some of these people have successfully broke their addiction and their crime, being in and out of jail. They will tell you, go to Pastor Danny Green's congregation, sit down with them and ask him, what happened? How did you get cleaned up? It finally took me getting arrested, hitting rock bottom, and the help that Pastor Danny Green gave us, and he housed us in his warehouses, and he got us cleaned up, that's how Curtis Robinson rose to where he's at.
County Commissioner Josh Kearns, just speaking in regards to the bus tickets, the county actually funded a program earlier this year called a Homeward Bound project. We use Volunteers of America that acts as our administrator for that program. Put in, I think it was $25,000. If those funds are exhausted, we've committed to funding as much money as needed. I actually take exception with your comment saying that it's shipping these people off. It's far from shipping these people off. If these individuals who find themselves being homeless, if the only thing keeping them homeless is the lack of funding to purchase a bus ticket to get them reunited with family or a close friend that can provide them with a safe place to call home into where they can actually get into recovery, I think that's an extremely small price to pay to get somebody out of homelessness. So I do take extreme exception with your remark of shipping these people off. It's far from doing that. It's getting them the services that they need to get out of the cycle of homelessness.
All right, we've almost been at this for an hour, so I'm going to take 3 more questions. Who wants them?
Sir, when was the last time that you went into the camp and talked to the people, met the people there? Not outside. When was the last time you went in?
I've never gone into Camp Hope. All right? Just like I would rarely go into other crime areas, unless I'm called to go there. I really appreciate your question, though, because it goes in the vein of what email I got from Zach Sapone. Zach asked me if I would go and stay the night in a shelter. Somehow by staying the night in the shelter is going to bring everybody together, because he wants a few other people to stay the night in the shelter, and somehow that's going to bring us together. The problem is I've lived in far worse than shelters. I've lived in the mud. I've lived in the cold with only a half shelter strung over my Humvee with the moat dug around it. I've lived in places where rats ran across my bed. And I did that in the service of my country. I won't talk about what I grew up with, but I can assure you that a BB gun will kill mice as they run across your bed. I don't need to go to Camp Hope to know what squalor looks like. I've seen squalor. I was on the meth abatement team. I went into houses where children were eating off the floor with dog feces smeared all over it and human feces to match it. I picked those young children up off those floors. I bundled them up into my arms, walked them to a door, and handed them off. I know what squalor looks like. I know what destitute looks like. I know what man can do to man, and it's ugly. And what we're doing to these people, I've seen it.
My follow-up question is, the city gave a plan to the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Commerce is handing out that $25 million right now to move people off this land. Why do you think Lisa Brown is going to take that money back and give it to you to go in and clear this camp?
I didn't ask her to give it to me.
You said you were going to get it.
She needs to do it. If she doesn't want to take responsibility and get it done by the date certain, we'll take the money and we'll do it for her.
Every
But
agency said it's
the
impossible.
The bottom line is, Lisa Brown has the means to transfer that money to the city and the counties to help clean up their mess. Not the city and county's mess, their mess. And quite frankly, Josh, did I not tell you that this could be expensive? We're willing and able to pay for our own, and then we will just send Lisa a bill.
Sheriff, you mentioned that the city and state, or at least WSP don't have the manpower to clear this out. So are you suggesting that the sheriff's office does, or
No.
what manpower do you expect to use when clearing it out?
Well, remember that clause that I can call all necessary aid? That meeting on the 28th includes jurisdictions from across the board, to include the Department of Ecology, because we know that we have a pretty substantial human waste issue to deal with. How are we going to reclaim that land?
So you're gonna call on SPD?
Yes.
Did the mayor ask you to do this? Did the
Which-
city or the mayor ask you to do this? She has said things are moving along, she's in conversations. Did she ask you to get involved?
I have been in conversations with the mayor, and when I told her what I had, when I called DOT, she said, great, but right behind you, Sheriff.
Okay.
Sheriff, this is Nate Sanford with the Inlander. There are other homeless camps in Spokane Valley, including one that holds 100 people, that are like arguably more so within your jurisdiction. Why is Camp Hope your main focus right now?
Nate, we clean up camps all the time, all right? In Spokane County, we clean up camps all the time. Camp Hope is a focus because you have multiple crimes going on there. To quote a KXLY story, I believe that there's brandings, beatings, kids being hit in the head with hammers, rapes. Are you okay with that?
Obviously not. Have you
Okay.
substantiated any of those?
All right? Are you okay with that?
Obviously not.
Okay. Neither are we. And those other camps you're mentioning, we're not hearing the complaints that we're hearing from this one. But I can assure you that the camps in Spokane Valley, we have dedicated resources. The city of the valley has dedicated resources to go out and get people help, get them help all the time. It's amazing that we can get people help from the valley because of, local control, we do our thing. But we are not compounded by this one little issue. The state isn't preventing the city of Spokane from doing its duty for its citizens. This is unique, totally apples and oranges conversation. So, next, anything else?
With bus tickets as one of your solutions, are you saying that most of the people at Camp Hope are from out of town?
Yeah.
People at the camp and folks who run the camp claim otherwise.
That's what they've been claiming for a long time, but
Have the claims been substantiated at all?
here's some information that you can all look at on your way out and go to the source yourself. It's fairly enlightening on some of the discussion about this. So, I believe, did I do my last three questions? If so, thank you for showing up. And, folks, I'll just finish it this way. Why are we supporting the victimization of people in that camp and the neighborhoods surrounding and the businesses surrounding? Why are we doing that? Why are we justifying that? And more importantly, why aren't you asking these hard questions of the other people that have been mentioned in this? I've never heard that type of exchange with the reporter with any of these other people. So, the reality is, we have a problem. The East Central District has lost their voice. We are going to help them regain it. We're going to help them have their lives back. We're also going to do our level best to help everybody in that camp. Bottom line on that one, though, is just like every other individual that's pulled themselves out of that drug-infested quagmire of crime, it really comes down to them, a desire to change. God gave us self-determination. Drugs take that away. And it seems that our government is just more than happy to watch people suffer and do nothing about it and point fingers at each other. And then when somebody does come and say, we're done, they want to demonize that individual. I will guarantee you, the citizens of this community do not stand with them. Thank you. Bites.